And after that, we have a configuration class, which we call it as an app config, under which we are giving the certain information to your Spring framework. Now, we have used one of the annotation called as component scan, through which we are going to pass the base package of an application. Now, what does this component scan will do is it goes to that respective location. In this case, the location is org.ass.springdemo. So inside this application under src/bin/java, it goes under that location. Now, whichever the packages matches with the one which we have provided, it starts scanning all the classes. It starts scanning all the classes. Now, while scanning all the classes, what it will do is wherever wherever it finds, an annotation called as at the rate component, wherever it finds the annotation called as at the rate component, that particular class object will be created. Now, the purpose of this component is to create an object of a class. To create an object of a class, we are using an annotation called as at the rate component. At the rate component is nothing but it will create an object of this particular class. Clear? The purpose of this component scan is nothing but it has to we are going to pass the certain location. It will go to that particular location and it will start scanning the classes. The reason is we are giving the control to the Spring framework to create an object of a classes. So we need to tell the Spring framework where that classes are present exactly. For that reason itself, we have an option called as component scan, through which we are going to pass the values, using which it goes and scan that respective packages. We see if we give only util, right? If we pass dot util, what happens is only util package is scanned, because springdemo.1 reads springdemo.util is there. So other remaining packages will not be scanned over there. But you will not have the classes where object has to be created under only one package. It will be distributed among multiple packages. So what we are going to do is we are going to pass the base package of the application. We are going to pass the base package of the application. Now, it uses this particular information. It uses this information, goes to that particular packages, scan the classes. Now it goes to this particular packages. Now there is no component present over here. Object will not be created. Now wherever on whichever the class there is an annotation called as at the rate component, that particular class object will be created. Clear? Yes. It's clear for everyone? Yes, sir. Now the next is one more annotation we have used it as at the rate configuration. Now, one more annotation we have used is at the rate configuration. Now, the purpose of this annotation called as at the rate configuration. The purpose of this annotation at the rate configuration. Now, we have a class, right? Through this class, we are providing some set of information to the Spring Core, where we are providing some set of information to the Spring Core. Now, what is happening over here is now Spring Framework has to identify from which class it has to read that configurable information. Getting? Yes. See, through this class, we are providing some information to the Spring Core, that is component scan. We are telling where the packages are present, where the classes are present. Now, Spring has to get to know this is a class from which it has to take the information. Yes, sir. This is a class from which it has to take the information. That is why we are using this at the rate configuration. On top of whichever the classes you are using at the rate configuration, that class will be treated as a configurable class. it will start taking the information which are present inside this class. It will be treated as a configurable class through which you can specify the what is that one being managed object, and then what it is that one through which you can specify something what as container managed B. You can specify container managed objects. That is, let's say there is an object called as configuration. There is an object called class called as configuration. Now this object has to be managed by the Spring. What is that one? Spring Core. It has to create and manage the object of Spring Core has to manage this. Now we cannot go and put component on top of your which is that class configuration class. We cannot go and put component on configuration class. We need to specify the Spring Core that this object has to be managed. In those cases, all those set of information goes in this particular class. What? No, this one. This object we are not going to create it. Now whatever the information is there, this information will be utilized by your Spring Boot. Now your Spring framework facing this annotation at the rate configuration. Once you run your application, what does it will do is it will search. It needs some set of information. The information as of now it requires which are the objects which has to be created. So to create an object, it requires where your classes are present. That is your package name or the qualified name of your classes. So we are providing this information. Now Spring Core has to get this information, right? Now in our application we have multiple classes. From which class this information has to be taken? How it will identify it is based on this configuration. On top of whichever the classes you have an annotation called as configuration information. That particular class it will treat it as a configurable class. That is, the information we are passing through that class will be taken by the Spring. What is that one? Spring framework. Now, along with that, you will have some set of information like you are going to create an object of your what is that one? Library. You are going to create an object of a class which is present in a library. Example is configuration class. Now in Hibernate you created a configuration class, right? Now let's say this object has to be created by your what is that one? Spring Core. Now I cannot go and open the library and put at the rate component because it is already present inside the library. Now what we will do is we will represent it inside this class, so that the Spring Core will take that information and it will manage that particular class. Which one? This one. Internally, this object we are not creating anything. Everything is managed by your Spring. Now, the purpose of this class, configurable is nothing but your library requires some information. That information has to be provided by from the project. Now, the project, let's say this is a package name which I have created. That package name will not be same with throughout all the companies or all the projects which you are doing. That is nothing but from your project you have to give the information. Like this, there are certain set of information which you have to pass it to your library from your application. That set of information we are going to give it through a Java class. Now this class has to be identified by the Spring Core module. These information needs to be taken from this particular classes. So to make that class, to make this class as a configurable class, we are using this configuration. Internally remain whatever the things is left out, we are not going to manage it manually. Internally, Spring Core is the one which is going to take care of the things, whether it's creating an object of this particular class configuration or managing that object, everything internally will be taken care. Only thing what happens is out of all the classes, this it treats as a configurable class. Clear? Clear with everyone? Internally, your container hey, you used Hibernate, right? Huh? Huh? Inside Hibernate, what is the purpose of Hibernate? Communication to our database. Now to connect to our database, you provide some information. What username, password. Will this be same for all the applications? Will this be same? It cannot be same at all for all the people, all the applications they are using. That means who has to provide this information? The one who has to connect to a database. Now your Hibernate library cannot predict what is the username, what is the database, what is the all those things. Now this is nothing but an information which is required to your libraries. It is required to your libraries. Now that is nothing but those set of information we call it as a configurable information. Configurable information. Now how we were providing when in case of Hibernate, it was nothing but we created one properties object. We were setting it in the form of key and value. That we used to pass it to your what is that one? One of the method called as set properties. We used to pass it. Using that information, what they did is they used that information and connected to the database. That is the functionality where it was. Now when it comes to the Spring, we are using one of the module called as Spring Core module. Now the functionality of the Spring Core module is to create an object of a class. Now if it has to create an object of a classes, we need to tell where that objects are present. Where that objects are present. That is nothing but a configurable information. Now every project will not have a same place in the classes. It depends. It depends on you what packages name you are creating or what structure you are creating. It left to you people. Now we need to provide an information to the Spring Core telling like this is a place where you have to go and search for the classes and create an object first. Now that information is a configurable information. Now we need to provide it from our project to the Spring Framework. Now to provide this, Spring Framework has provided one of the annotation called as component scan. Now this component scan is a class level annotation. You know, right? There are different levels of annotation. There are annotations only you have to use on the top of the method. Example is @override. You cannot take that and go and put it on top of your class. It will not work out because it is a method level annotation. There is a class level annotations. There is a property level annotations. Now they have provided one of the annotations called as component scan, which is a class level annotation. Now, if I want to provide the information to your Spring Framework that this is a place where the classes are present, I need to use this annotation. Since it is a class level annotation, I need to create a class and I need to add that annotation over. Clear? Yes. It's clear. Yes. Now, after adding that annotation, since it's an information which Spring, what we call Spring Core has to identify this particular information. We need to have an identification for your Spring Framework that this is a class from which you need to take the information. That identification is configuration. Clear? Yes, internally, if you go into the configuration, the remaining managing the objects, creating the objects, everything will be taken care of with your respective respective core module. Clear? Everyone knows annotation, right? Yes. It is nothing but some extra set of logic will be written here, and that logic then make it as an annotation. You can create your own annotation. Just create what is that one? You use this as an example. Now what you have to use, create one interface, the interface. Now next what you will do, add component, add this annotation called as document. Then you can provide the classes from which has to be executed. For this you have to create one simple logic you write is create a class. Inside that constructor will be there. create some what we call it as a static block or a constructor, put system.out.println. Now make that class as an implementation of your annotation which you are going to create. That annotation, put it on top of some of the method or anything, run your method, that logic will get executed. Clear?
Yes, yes.
That try it out. You try it out. Create a class. Put system.out.println in your static block or your constructor wherever you want. Now that you make it as an annotation. The simple thing is that @interface, @target, @document, and you have to give it as a target is nothing but inside the target you give the respective class which needs to be executed. Now that whatever the annotation you are making is right, put it on top of method or anything, execute that method. Now when method is getting executed, your logic will execute. The logic is nothing but system.out.println. Something should be printed here. So now configurable information in the sense not only the component. Now it's clear to this.
Yes, sir.
It's clear to this.
Yes,
Now component scan. What is the purpose of component scan? It has to scan the classes. Now, as I told you before, your project will consist of inbuilt classes and it will have a custom classes. Now, what we can do is I can use component scan. And I can tell where these packages are present. And what I can do is now what it will do is Spring will start scanning these packages. Under these packages, whichever the classes comes, it will scan. On top of whichever the class, there is an annotation called as @component. @component will start creating. Spring will start creating an object of that particular class. Clear?
Yes, sir.
It's clear. And there are another set of classes which are present in library. It has to be created. Let's say configuration. If we are not creating an object of configuration, what will have? We cannot perform the database operation. Now again, I don't want to use a new keyword to create an object. I will give the information to the Spring core module. That information also will be part of your configurable class. Getting?
Yes, sir.
What we have to do it, I'll tell later. But remember, this when I say configurable class, as of now restrict only to creating an object. Later you will get multiple things inside this. As of now, since we are learning Spring core module, restrict the configuration related to creating an object. Now, how many types of object comes? One is an inbuilt classes, another one is a custom classes. But if it is a custom classes, we know that whichever the class object has to be created by the Spring core, on top of that we have to use an annotation called as @component. Now to tell where these classes are present, we have a component scan. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Now again, what will happen is it will scan the classes and it will create an object. Now let's say there is an object called as configuration. Now let's say there is a class called as configuration. There is a class called as configuration. Now look, this is also a class. This class, it is an inbuilt class. That is, it's coming from one of the library. Now I cannot go and put @component on top of this. We cannot do it because it's a dot class file. I cannot go and add a @component over here. Or if I give the package name, since there is no @component, object cannot be created. Now this class object has to be created by the Spring framework. Now that logic also will be part of this configuration. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Understood?
Yes, sir.
Understood?
Yes.
Like this, any sort of information which you are going to be, which has to be considered by your Spring core, that set of logic will be part of your configurable class. Now to make your class as a configurable class, you will have @configuration. The information which you are going to provide it over here is component scan. Where you will pass your base package, it will start scanning the classes. And another set of is your Spring core module has to manage some of the inbuilt classes of your library. That also you are going to provide it over. That we'll see it later. Clear till this?
Yes, sir.
It's clear for everyone?
Yes, sir.
Understood?
Yes, sir.
So there is no doubt with respect to